over here, I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate cake decorating easily. I also make simple sit-down videos taking you through all things baking and cakes related, handing you simple, practical, and helpful tips to help you level up your baking and decorating. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing, hit the notification bell to be notified of future videos such as these and more. And on this channel, there is a varied range of tutorials to help you bake a cake, decorate a cake, and I have a ton of videos showing you how I fixed certain cake decorating issues, which are all up on the channel. I might leave some in the description box at the end of this live. Today is my very first live YouTube tutorial where I am taking you through a simple bake. We're baking a very simple vanilla cake recipe. Now, the recipe and the method plus ingredients and everything is chosen on purpose just to make for simplicity in baking. I'll be talking you through the simple science of it, why I chose certain ingredients, my own preferences, and I'll be giving you some more tips about my own methods, why I use them, and some behind the scene information about things that I do to guarantee a good bake. Hopefully, at the end of this tutorial, you yourself will be able to have some sort of understanding of the baking process, the small details about some of the science of baking, so you can undertake a bake on your own time with great results. So to start with, I have a selection of ingredients. I will talk you through what they do in the baking, in the creaming process, how they marry together and all sorts of stuff like that. The intention is to limit the information to what we are doing today, just so that you are not greatly overwhelmed. But if necessary, I'll leave some more information and resources in the description box at the end of this live session. Like I said, this is my very first live tutorial, so hopefully there is a ton of value for you to pick up along the way. So without having to waste your time, I will jump right in. And over here, the list of the ingredients are also in the description box for you. And just so you know, this particular recipe I have used time and again and have recreated the same recipe in tutorials that are linked on this channel. I'll leave some more information about that in the description box. So this is more like bringing you behind the scene information that is not captured in the tutorials that are edited on the channel. So over here, I have sugar, I have margarine, but I'll be talking through the simple ingredients over here, and then I'll list them down below for you. So starting with, I have sugar. This is about 640 grams. I'll probably not go through the measurements of those because I don't have them on top of my head. But like I said, more information will be left in the description box for you. So there's caster sugar here, which have a little finer granules compared to granulated sugar. Caster sugar for this recipe can be replaced with granulated sugar. I have used granulated sugar in the past for the same recipe and it's turned out fine with just a little subtle difference. For instance, the crumb is just a little bit more coarse, a little drier, and you can feel some of the sugar granules in it, but greatly that's just a case of preference. It really doesn't make a huge difference. So if you can't find caster sugar around where you are, you can simply replace it with granulated sugar and it will be fine. The uses of sugar, especially in baking a cake, primarily is to add taste, sweetness. So if you're using caster sugar, it tends to have a generally bland, as in the taste variation for caster sugar is very basic. But if you were to replace caster sugar with, say, dark brown sugar or light brown sugar, it enhances flavor in a very different context. But for the caster sugar over here, it obviously adds taste, and combined with margarine or butter, which is the solid fat used in this baking process, we're going to be using the creaming method for this bake. So combined with fat at the formative stages of the creaming process is able to create air pockets that traps in the gases during the bake and helps with leavening. But also sugar tenderizes adds sweetness, and sugar is able to retain moisture within the environment in which it is. So essentially, by extension, it is able to preserve the baked good for longer, which means baked goods that have higher amounts of sugar are able to stay a little longer, unlike other baked goods that do not have sugar in it. So that's the basic essence of sugar in baking. But like I said, I will have more information left in the description box when we come to that. The next thing I have over here is margarine. I have about 525 grams of margarine that I have left to come to room temperature. I'll be touching on the subject of room temperature in a moment, but I've left this on the countertop. And combined with sugar, it creates the basis of some, in the creaming process, it creates the basis of air pocket formation and also enhances the bake in the process. Having said that, fat or the margarine here also works in conjunction with the other ingredients to slow down gluten formation, helps to tenderize the bakes, add flavor depending on what fat you are using. Butter is great for flavor. I have chosen margarine, which my favorite brand here being FLORA. I tend to switch between FLORA and stock, and this time I only settled for FLORA because when I went to Costco to shop, they carried FLORA, which came on a deal, so I ended up picking that. So for this bake, I'm using FLORA margarine, and to enhance the flavor, I'll be settling on vanilla and to enhance the flavor. So that should be all right. But for this particular bake as well, you can replace FLORA or margarine with the same amount of butter, and that will be fine. A good tip if you do that though is to beat it a little longer. So for this recipe, I recommend beating the creaming the butter and sugar for about 6 to 7 minutes. But if you're using butter, maybe extend it by another 3 minutes and you should have the same result. Obviously, at the end of the bake, butter settles and solidify, so it will give you a tighter crumb that varies slightly to margarine, but it is neither here nor there. Like I said, there will be more information about the use of both in the description box, just so that you are better informed. But if you're not using butter for this bake, you can replace the butter with stock instead of FLORA here. And like I said, I have some tutorials on this channel where I have tested both. The next ingredients I have here is eggs. As you can see, my eggs is broken and mixed together slightly here. This is just to keep me organized. Organizing during the baking process is key to getting the best result, because you don't want to come to creaming and mixing your ingredients and then remembering you've forgotten something. But I also did that also so I can keep the stream flowing and easy to attend to as well. For the eggs adds moisture, but its main use in the baking process is to bind the ingredients. So egg tends to hold everything together. So you realize that if you have a specific bake that doesn't have egg and you don't resort to the right substitutes for eggs, your baked good can fall apart. So egg forms has the job of holding everything together. It also adds color, because if we're using whole eggs and including the yolks, that adds the yellow color to the bake. And for some cake recipes, say depending on what kind of cake you need to make, sometimes the yolk is eliminated, or some cakes require more yolks and a variation of egg white and all that. For us, for this particular bake today, we are using whole eggs, and so therefore the yolks adds to the color, flavor, and the eggs themselves, including binding, also helps to tenderize the bake, giving us a very light, delicate crumb as well. My next thing, the next ingredient here is flour. In England, we have access to self-raising flour. So this is basically white plain flour that has rising agent in it already. This makes for convenience. So you'll find that for this particular recipe, I'm not going to add baking soda or baking powder to it, and that's because there's already leavening agent in the self-raising flour. To this, I have already added a pinch of salt. So salt to enhance the taste and flavor over here. Now, if you don't have access to self-raising flour and all you have is plain flour, I would recommend you settle for a recipe that has the right measurements of of leavening agent, i.e., baking soda or baking powder. And that is because I am not sure, because I haven't tried this recipe with plain flour, I am not going to be able to give you exact quantities of leavening agent you can add to plain flour. Of course, the intention is to give you the right information so you can undertake the bake confidently. So for that reason, if you only have access to plain flour, maybe consider recipes that will give you the right quantities. But for here in the UK, I'm lucky to access self-raising flour, which I am using in this particular recipe as well. The next thing I use for my vanilla cake recipe is buttermilk. Buttermilk had acidity in it, so it enhances it adds a little tangy note to the cake. It is very subtle, so it's not like you're going to add acid to your cake and feel a lemony, tangy feeling taste in it. But besides taste, buttermilk also helps to tenderize the gluten as well in the bake. So it helps to give you a very delicate and soft crumb for this cake. It took me a lot of experimenting and practicing to get here. But if you don't have buttermilk, you can replace buttermilk with sour cream. Just know that they may perform similar functions, but the outcome is not exactly the same. Outside of sour cream, you can add the same quantity of milk and 2 tablespoonfuls of white vinegar, or I tend to substitute that with cider vinegar. It's neither here nor there. I'm sure there are resources I will link below to help you with all of that and the substitution and more information for you. But if you have access to buttermilk, maybe that's what you should settle for. I got this from my local Tesco. Now, the last of the ingredients that I have here is vanilla. I'm using pure vanilla extract for the flavor since we're having a vanilla cake. Now, between this vanilla, which is the Kirkland brand, and that Molina, which I picked up from Amazon, I have an interesting story to tell about this vanilla recipe, this vanilla extract. Normally, I would shop for my ingredients wholesale from Costco, except on a few occasions, Costco is not very close to me. It's about half an hour's drive. So on a few occasions when I've gone to Costco in recent times, they've run out of their main brand of Kirkland vanilla extract. So on one of these occasions, fed up, I decided to check online. I tend to be very particular about my ingredients. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to pick such a trusted item from Amazon. However, when I checked on Amazon, even though the price was slightly higher, it was not so different, especially if I consider transport costs and everything else. So I ordered that from Amazon. Of course, having made the purchase, I was made a suggestion of Molina, whatever the brand is over here. I made this, when it was suggested to me, I looked at the information and it was a liter of vanilla extract for, I think, about 25 pounds. And whilst Costco carried this particular brand for about 15 or 14.99, I got this from Amazon for about £22.50, which is £7 more. Now, when the suggestion for this brand came up, naturally, I was tempted. I thought, well, since I can't get my favorite brand in Costco, and there's a suggestion for me, let me try this and see. The price difference kind of jumped up to me because for 473 mils, I'm getting £22.50, and for a litre, I'm getting this for £25. So it did make me think there was something amiss. Nonetheless, I just ordered the one bottle. I did pick a couple of bottles of this one. And lo and behold, when this brand came, I was testing out some recipes. And when I tried to taste the buttercream that I was testing this brand on, the mouthfeel was slightly odd. Not anything that would jump out to you, but it seemed to have an aftertaste as though I was making, let's say, a caramel or something. I wasn't so sure. So I thought initially it was my bias because I had been used to this particular brand, and I'd been used to a certain mouthfeel for buttercream. So I thought it was my own bias. Having gone back and forth, something clicked, and I thought, let me pick up the bottle and look at the ingredients. And look, the ingredient listing for pure vanilla extract, and the pure vanilla extract normally is vanilla pods or vanilla seeds soaked in some form of alcohol and liquid and water that is left over time and then sieved out and bottled, and you have vanilla extract. Well, with this, there was quite a few listings of ingredients between pure vanilla extract. There was ethyl alcohol, there was propylene glycerol, there was even caramel color. So even the dark color that you observe in here as though it is vanilla, it's all not exactly vanilla. And then somewhere along the line, it also stated that it contains artificial and natural vanilla flavors. So that was the answer I knew, that this wasn't exactly vanilla. There might be a use or purpose for this, but for me, this is not my favorite or even a recommended brand of vanilla that I would recommend to use. I obviously ended up having it and couldn't return it. So I use it in recipe testing. But if I have any specific recommendation for vanilla for you, it would be the Kirkland brand. Nielsen Macy, I think, from my local Tesco is a good brand as well, except for I think about 70 mils or something. The price is quite steep, if you like. So compared to the 473, I'll settle for this for £25 if that was the case. So that's a bit more information about the use of vanilla over here. Having said that, a few other tips that I use when I'm baking my cakes. For instance, when it comes to fat, it's recommended that your fat is at room temperature. What does that even mean? There's so many ways I can explain that. But in simple terms, the baking process is more like forming an emulsion, as in the ingredients themselves will not mix together in their natural forms. So you create a different form, as in you change the forms so they mix together, which is why the fat is creamed with the sugar and the eggs are beaten before you add the self-raising flour and all of that to it. With that in mind, for this process to work out efficiently for you, the ingredients have to be at their best state before you start, which is why it is recommended that you have your ingredients at room temperature. Now, I live in England, so it can't be cold nearly all year through. And then somewhere in the middle, there's a 3-day summer where everything is hot. But that is neither here nor there. Occasionally, life happens, and then I don't get to take my butter out on time, or I'm not able to take out my margarine out on time, yet there has to be a bake that I need to do. So something I do is that when I take my margarine or butter from the fridge, I don't leave it at room temperature when I can, but that is barely the experience for me. I tend to measure it right and then put it in the microwave at maybe 2 40-second intervals. The intention is to observe it closely, because with the microwave, a little mistake or distraction and then the whole thing is melted down. So melting it at like a 40-second time allows you the opportunity to melt this down and bring it to room temperature. And what I will be looking for is for the butter or margarine to be at a spreadable consistency. Spreadable consistency, to try that, you have the margarine, you can dip your finger in it, a bit will be left on the finger, yet the hole that is created stays firm and the same. The next thing you can do is also try and turn, if you're using a spatula, let it go, let it fall by itself without added pressure. That is exactly the right consistency that I prefer to have my butter. It is the same for when I am making buttercream as well. So that's a tip to consider when you are using margarine or butter for your bake. That said, eggs. In England, I know there are some places where the eggs are to be refrigerated. Thankfully, in England, recommendations are that you can keep your eggs on a countertop or somewhere around the room, on a windowsill or stuff like that. It means the eggs can be cold. There's a reason why it's recommended that egg yolks and egg whites are separated easily when the egg is cold, because then you're able to kind of lift the egg yolk and leave the egg white. But if it is in that cold state, it can be difficult to bake with and can affect the creamy, the mixture, if you like. So for me, even if I leave my eggs at room temperature, something I do generally is that I pick up my eggs and then run them under water. So perhaps put the eggs in a bowl and pour lukewarm water. Now, this can be a kettle of water, but of course, if you were to boil lukewarm water in the kettle, you can easily get carried away and have very hot water, and that might create problems because we don't want to boil the eggs. But what you can do is run a tap water, considering your tap is not running too hot on the hot side. Run some water over the eggs, leave it for 10 minutes, and then perhaps break it and measure it as you would like. One way to find out how lukewarm the water is when you dip your finger in the water for about 10 seconds and you don't have to jump and pick out your finger. Then you know the temperature of the water is right. In so doing, you are able to kind of warm up the eggs slightly without cooking them, which will then be suitable for when you come to using them in the mixing or the creaming process. And that's something I do. I recommend that, and I think I have put some information about that in the tutorials for this particular recipe that has already been created on the channel. But just in case you missed that, at least that's the information here for you. Some of the tools that you will need for your bake is obviously a mixer. You don't necessarily need a high-end mixer like I have here. This is my third Kenwood mixer. I have the XL. I started off with a normal hand mixer and then upgraded to the Kenwood KM330, which is a fairly small mixer. And then obviously over time I upgraded until I got to this one. I have the Kenwood XL, but frankly this is my favorite Kenwood to use. I have a video on this channel where I unboxed it. I did promise a review, but that is yet to come. Hopefully I should be able to do that in this video in the future. So if you do want to see more live tutorials like this, leave a comment in the comment section, and hopefully if you're watching this on replay, there's more information for you. There's more information and value for you there. So that is my Kenwood K mix here, but for the quantity that I have here, you can use a hand mixer fairly right. It's the timings that you have to tweak slightly. I'll leave some information down there in the description box for you if you happen to catch this live out on replay. So with that in mind, that is just about some of the tools that you will need. The other thing here, for the mixer, I am obviously using the paddle attachment here, which I will attach in a minute. With that, you also need a spatula for stirring into the mixture. So yeah, I have there one of the Kenwood ones here and a regular spatula here, and that's just about it. And for the flour, this is already sifted in sifted, and I have added the pinch of salt, so probably a spoon or something to stir it all together to aerate it a bit, and that's just about that. So that's the general information about the ingredients, about my vanilla. We are baking a simple tray bake, which is in a 9 by 12 tin. This is a fairly simple tin. You could do it in a smaller tin, but that will overfill. You'll see how the bake turns out in this particular tin. Normally, I recommend the PME tins, but this was one of the first tins I picked up on Amazon, and it served me well. It does have burn spots, especially in the oven, because my oven tends to run a bit warm. But I picked a set of 3 of these somewhere on Amazon. I'll leave some links for you if needed. And one important thing, especially for this bake, is baking pins. Because this tray is a little wide, to help the baking process and to help things cook evenly, I have this metal baking pin. Well, there are specialist baking pins, but this is a flour pin, if you like, that I stick in the middle so that it helps the cooking of the cakes in the oven. Another thing I do with my cakes when I'm baking in the oven is to put a tray of water in the oven. This creates some moisture that cools the cakes when it is in the oven baking. You could skip that and use baking strips. You could buy baking strips from Amazon or make some DIY ones. I believe I have a video here somewhere. I'll link it for you, and if it isn't, I'll perhaps check on my short. So all those resources. So all the information this giving you, if I've missed something, I will add that to the description box. So don't forget that this particular recipe, like I said, bakes in the oven with some water to cool the oven whilst it is baking. I'm trying to give us all the information we need here, just so that when the mixer starts running, it's not so loud that I can't talk to you over it. So bear with me. But anything I have missed, hopefully I should be able to leave more information in the description box for you, especially if you catch this on replay. With that said, I think one thing I will also consider is for us to be able to cut this cake that is already baked so that we can check how many servings we have for this. This particular recipe I developed myself. So this bakes 2 6-inch tins at 4-inch deep, and if put together with buttercream, you're looking at nearly 8.5 or 9 inches tall cake for a 6-inch for the same quantity. Or it will bake about 2 7-inch at 6 inches high, if you like, 5 to 6 inches high. So a fairly short 7-inch cake, or a single, no, that's there's a slight mistake on the information there. I'll leave all that in the description box for you. So at least I know this particular recipe bakes 2 6-inch tins, and when the cake is put together, stands at nearly 9 inches tall, which is a taller cake. And a third of the same recipe bakes 2 5-inch tins. So I think I'm kind of confusing it with the different variations, but I'll leave specific information in the description box about the sizing and the servings for you. I think when I tried this recipe earlier, we were looking at like small sizes of about, I think, 1.5 inches each. And because this is over, I think, about 3 inches and 1.5 inches at 3 inches, and you had about 38 to 42 slices. So it is fairly reasonable in terms of the sizing. So it would be great for a family gathering of a small selection of people, up to 40 if you like. But we'll be cutting into this so that you can see what the crumb looks like, what the bake is at the end of it, and how many servings. So that's enough talking. Welcome to my channel. And like I said, if you're watching this on replay, just forgive the errors and the information that seems a little bit fuzzy. That is simply because this is recorded live for you, and hopefully in future videos I can bring you some more live videos and inform you better so that you have the confidence to go and undertake your own bake. So I'm gonna get the mixer in place, and we're going to get the ingredients in it. So we have the margarine. I think, admittedly, I left this margarine a little longer outside, so it's a bit softer than I would want it, but that is just by the way. Now we have the sugar in here, and with that comes some of the vanilla. Vanilla I can measure specifically, but over here I tend to kind of tip it in really. But reasonably, you should have about 2 tablespoonfuls for this quantity. So we'll turn this on. And for the beating, the creaming process, just get this out of the way. For the creaming process, timing is everything you need. So for me, this goes on for about up to 7 minutes. And throughout the creaming process, I'll show you what to look out for and what to observe when the sugar and margarine are creaming. One thing I like about this mixer, as I mentioned earlier, is that it is heavy, but the motor is also fairly silent compared to some of my Kenwood mixers that, compared to the XL, is slightly louder. So when I turn this on, I might not be able to talk much. But if you have any questions, leave them in the description box and I'll talk to you later. Just a bit of information here for you. I recommend that for this recipe, the butter and the fat and sugar are beaten for 6-7 minutes. For the first 3 minutes, obviously, I did mention that I left the margarine out a little longer, so it is softer than I would have wanted it. But for the first 4 minutes, 3-4 minutes, this is what I am looking for. The yellowness in the fat has changed now, and it's becoming whiter and whiter. So it's not like white, it is off-white at this point. You want to be careful at how much time you cream your sugar and fat, because there comes a certain point where you overbeat this and then it breaks and will affect the outcome of your bake. So timing is really important to keep an eye on. And for one of the things you can observe is at this point, at stage 3 minutes to 4 minutes, when I scoop a bit, this is what you see. It doesn't fall easily by itself. On the side, I have to almost like shake it slightly for it to fall. You can, depending on what you're looking to achieve, you can at this point begin to add the others, but I recommend the extra 2 minutes just so that you can get it at its best stage. But that's, of course, when you're using the same ingredients that I have recommended here and the process that I have talked you through. With that noted, the other thing to note here is that on this mixer, the Kenwood K mix, I beat this at 3.5 to 4, which is medium high. And because it's a heavy, efficient mixer, that's where I get the best result from. You could do a bit lower. I haven't tried that. And if you did decide to do it a bit low, beat it at a bit lower speed, you might have to beat it a little longer. If you do decide to extend the speed upper, then of course you have to consider the time. So perhaps if you go up to 5, it will be mixing vigorously. So a good point is medium high on this particular mixer for at number 3.5 to 4. So that's where I'm beating this, and I'm going to finish it for the next 2 minutes. because my margarine was a little softer than I wanted it, I've reduced it to a beating of an extra minute instead of 2. And what we're looking for is this time, if we turned it down, it's still stable, but on the side it falls by itself. And that is exactly the consistency that I need for the bake. So on this note, I am going to be adding my eggs. I will start by adding it slowly, but earlier I did show that I had mixed the egg to hurry the process on already. So I'm going to add this a little slowly until all is done, and then I'll tell you what to do next. We're adding the eggs, and the speed here is speed number 2. And even though I have been a bit reluctant to talk over the mixer mixing, the mixer is running, it's stable, and yet you can hear me over it. So this mixer is actually a great investment if you choose to. But I've also tried the Orkma, which is a smaller yet efficient, reasonably priced mixer. I'm actually in the process of creating a review on that, so hopefully that should be out very soon. Whilst the eggs have gone in, at the right temperature, you'll observe that the mixture looks slightly curdled over here. This is actually very common in baking. When the ingredients begin to mix, sometimes depending on what temperature it is around you or the temperature of the ingredients, you can have curdled. You can have the eggs looking very curdled when it's added into the mixture, but it's fine. You can mix it all together, and even if it doesn't come together, you can occasionally add a little bit of flour to hurry the mixing process and to tie everything together. For me at this stage, I will increase this to 3.5 again and let it beat for another minute or 2. This is to just allow the mixture to mix together very well, the egg and butter and sugar mixture, to a very smooth mixture before I begin to introduce the flour. At this point, normally when I'm baking or I'm making this recipe, I have a timer so that I can observe the timings for the recipes and the mixing process, just so that it can guarantee consistent results for me. With that said, here as the eggs are beaten, you can see that on the side it is curdled, but the eggs are mixing together nicely in here. So that's where we're at. And I'm going to wipe my worktop slightly. When you're standing and waiting, 2 minutes seems like a very long time, but it actually isn't. So I am just about getting there. And then when 2 minutes is up, I'm going to slow the mixer down to a fold function. The good thing about this mixer is that there is a fold function that allows me to add the flour. And you want to be able to add the flour with the buttercream interchangeably, if you like. So here is the first batch, and I add, normally I would just tip the buttercream in it. You perhaps want to do that in 2 rounds if you choose to, but I just lob the entire thing in and it's fine. So I'm finishing off with the flour, some of which has ended up on the table, but hopefully it won't affect the bake at all. So let's wipe this off. And without wanting to overmix this, I'm going to turn the mixer off, and I am my brain has to remind me this is a live tutorial, so my bad habits don't. Okay, there we have it. So I am just going to fold this in. Right, to mix the flour in, the spatula turns around and then cuts through the middle, just so that everything folds in without having to vigorously overmix. But frankly, I have tried that in the past and it's still fine. It hasn't affected my bake at all. The idea is to scoop any residual ingredients like the eggs, which may settle below the mixer, and hurry the mixing process on without having to overmix. Even though, frankly, this mixer is actually very good at mixing the ingredients together by itself. I've tried, part of testing the mixer itself was just trying to mix everything together without helping it along, and it came out fine. But of course, the intention here is to give you the best practice to guarantee the best results for you. So I am having to do that right. So here we are. I'll go back to fold for about 20 seconds. We count 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And we're done here. So I'm going to get everything off from here. Tell me you haven't noticed my spatula is half broken, but I love this spatula. The recent Kenwood mixers have very flimsy spatulas, but I can't let go of this old one, which actually is the spatula that came with the old version of my Kenwood, which is the KM330. I love this spatula. So, and my most recent spatula I picked up from Amazon came a bit flimsy as well. So sometimes when I'm mixing the batter in, this comes off. So I'm a little insecure about using it here just in case it falls in the batter. So you see, you don't need everything to be perfect. And sometimes the perfection you see out here is not what it seems to be. Just master a great technique and some understanding of how the ingredients work. Go try it out for yourself and see how that works. So for this recipe, it bakes at 170 degrees C for an hour max, an hour to an hour and 15. Of course, like I said, I put a tray of water in the oven to kind of cool the oven as I go along. Occasionally, I have missed using the water, and keeping an eye on the mixture, it comes out fine after an hour. But I realized that in recent times, a new oven I got bakes a little on the hotter side. So sometimes the side has burned. And so there we have it. And we have our mixture butter in here. And for me, I just like to level it up a little bit on here. Just make sure, because it's a square tin, just make sure the corners are filled properly. And over there, I am done here. And then normally I will stamp this on a worktop just to pop out any air bubbles. Yeah, that's a little bit noisy. Ignore the noise, and there you have it. And what I'll do is that I'll stick the pin in here. Of course, after baking, you can pop the pin out, But I'm going to put this in the oven, and what I'll do, so we don't have to wait another hour and 30 minutes for this to bake, is to bring out the one I baked earlier, which I have kept cooling, and then we can talk through it. Okay, so I'm going to go put this in the oven, and then I'll be back. So, spoiler alert, we didn't have to. So, spoiler alert, we don't have to wait for all the time for the hour and 15 minutes for the cake to bake. So I went ahead and baked one earlier. Actually, I baked it fresh this evening, but I kept it cooling for you. Like I said earlier, there is just a slight burn here, but obviously over here on this channel, we do show our mistakes. And boy, if you check on the channel, you will see quite a few mistakes I have made and some fixes. That is just to let you know that the baking process, as meticulous as it is, things can go wrong, and you just have to learn to let go and forgive yourself and practice better. So we have our 9 by 12-inch bake here. I'm just one of these people who just cannot let go of this crusty bit here. So I'm going to trim all of that on the side. And I don't want to make this too particular by whipping out a whole ruler to measure this cake up. The good thing is that I'm baking this for some colleagues at church. So at least you get to see, if you woke up one day and you wanted to just bake a cake, a simple cake for friends and family, this is a good recipe to consider. With that said, I'm going to move that onto here and then over there. And let me just wipe my worktop quickly, and then we can cut the cake up. Let me just wipe my work. Okay, so here we have it. So our cake is done. So let's see. I'm just going to cut them into okay, so that's going to be a little bigger. So we have, this is going straight in here. Okay, so I think the end here is slightly larger, if you like, but when we have a look at the crumb here, the crumb of this cake, obviously it was kept refrigerated to chill it quickly, so you don't get to see the tender crust, but this is actually a good crumb over here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we go back in, I'm not being very specific about the sizes here, but for instance, here is a square that will make for a good cup of tea. I think the next bake I'll probably cover in buttercream, but so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We have about 30 slices here, and you have these on the end here, and we have obviously some smaller ones. So perhaps for an even size, you're looking about 20 to 25 servings for this particular one, really. So that's our cakes done. These were chilled, obviously, so I'm going to leave it to come to room temperature and I'll box them up. But if you have further questions about this recipe and the cake we baked here, leave it in the comment section, so hopefully I can catch you and answer that. But if you want to see some more live sessions like this one in future, obviously leave